Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Positive Girl podcast with me, Sabrina. This is the show that'll help you become your best self, and today we are talking about what it looks like to grow and change emotionally, proof of personal growth. But before we jump into that, as always, I want to invite you to come say hi to me and become friends on Instagram. I am at Sabrina Joy Perozzo. I'm also on TikTok under the same name if you prefer TikTok, because I think it's so super fun. You can say hi to me over there. Also, send me an email to realpositivegirlpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, prayer requests, feedback, topic suggestions, whatever you want to say, I am here to listen and respond and become friends with you guys. If you look down in the show notes of the show, you will see that you can join the Facebook community, which is the Real Positive Girl community. I am trying to build that up and get people to want to talk about what they're going through, be able to encourage people, share when I drop new courses, or not really courses, sorry. I take that back. When I drop new free resources, and because I have one coming up, and I also have a emotional reflection challenge that's free that's coming up, and just sharing those kind of things, going in that group live every week to talk about things that I feel like would be important to you, all that stuff. So you can look into that. Also down there is the link to the newsletter that comes out every single week. It is released every Monday. So today, when you're listening to the podcast, it will had already been released, but you are welcome to go ahead and sign up and be on the list for the next week and in the future. And I think there's a couple other links down there in the show notes. So go ahead and take a look at all that whenever you want. To get more information about me, go to the website, listen to other episodes, all the things. But let's just go ahead and jump into what we're talking about today, which is, again, what it looks like to grow and change emotionally, proof of personal growth. When I realize I have changed, when I am okay, I have made changes, I am growing, I am becoming a better person, I get so excited. Literally so excited. I remember that even this week, which was just a couple days ago, I was excited to share with my therapist how excited I was that I have become a lot less people pleasy-er. I've actually been able to shift my mindset of being a people pleaser to not more and more. And I saw a dramatic change in that this week. And it was basically a disagreement that I had with my husband. And usually after we have a disagreement, no matter whose fault it is, I always want to do everything I can to make him feel better and to not have him be upset, and really just go all out to be okay, I just want everything to be better. I want to keep the peace. What can I do for you? And really kind of bogging him down with, what can I do for you? How can I make you happy? And really sacrificing any self-worth or anything that I have in the situation. But this situation, I did not. I was just is there anything I can do to help you? And he said no. And then I left. I just left the room, and we kind of had some time apart, and we realized that was super beneficial. And then we came back together and talked about the issue the next day, and it was great. And I got so excited though that I had actually made that change. I had experienced that growth. It was so super cool. So genuinely, I want to share with you that I do get excited that I am making steps in the right direction away from behaviors and mindsets that are, really doing the opposite of serving me, actually tearing me apart and causing daily pain, just to be totally honest with you guys. But sometimes it can be difficult to recognize change in ourselves, right? Especially if we are slogging through a difficult season of life and everything feels like it's coming at us, and we are just really putting in the work to make ourselves better. But it can be so difficult to recognize it. We don't know what to look for to identify the change. If it's not some sort of dramatic change, then we can easily miss it. Or maybe a real concern that I used to deal with is if it's not big enough for other people to point out and see that you are making changes, you are making the progress that you need, we can get all bent out of shape because we aren't getting that external validation that we unfortunately sometimes live our life on. And external validation can really, really mess you up. I promise you, I still struggle with it, but I've been working to get past it. I wouldn't say overcome it, because I still feel like sometimes it's going to be an issue depending upon what I'm working on. And I want to just recognize that and realize that, but I am working through it each and every day. And if you struggle with needing external validation from other people, which means that you just need other people to recognize you and to affirm that you are doing a good job, that you are making changes, that you are making progress, that you are a good person, that you need to be recognized, all of these things, and you can't do it for yourself. Please, I just want to help you. Please listen to episode 367 of this podcast that I recorded earlier this year. I believe I recorded it in February 2022, if you're listening way in the future, and it will help you. It will so help you with working through external validation, like needing that, because we don't need it. We need to validate ourselves first. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. It feels so darn good. So darn good to get that external validation from people, other people outside of ourselves. But we can't count on that. We can't live our lives like that for everything, or else we will literally have like no self-worth, barely any self-confidence, and the seasons in life where we don't have those people like continuing to say yes to us and tell us how amazing and great we are, we could possibly fall into darker times of despair and maybe depression and other things that are really bad. So it's just super important. I would encourage you or information for you to pass on to someone else. Listen to that episode. It'll be really helpful. If you don't want to do that, go online and look into it and how you can work through it, because that's how passionate I am about getting over the need for external validation. But getting off that rant, I also want you to understand that the most important things that we are doing in our lives, and this just goes back to us not being able to recognize change, or really wanting other people to see that we are doing the changes, making those changes in our life. But the most important things we are doing in our lives aren't the most impressive things. And I actually just heard this quote. I heard a quote from Pastor Stephen Furtick from Elevation Church that said, "What's the most important isn't always the most impressive." And it really stuck with me. That's why I'm literally telling everyone. I believe I already made a social media post about it. I'm talking about it here on the podcast, and I will continue to tell people about it. I put it as a post-it note on the board in my office right now. So if you're watching the video, it is right over here. Because it made such a huge impact on me. Again, what's the most important isn't always the most impressive. So there will be like many things that we do in our lives, including our emotional work and that personal growth that we're talking about right now, and that we're continually going through and on a journey to experience every single day. Those things that will not be recognized by others. They just won't care, or they don't think it's enough. They have their own opinions, or they just won't recognize it. They won't see it. It's not for them to see, because it's something that's happening in your heart and in your mind, and it will manifest itself on the outside in the actions and behaviors that you engage in. But if they're not privy to that, then they're not going to know unless you tell them. So, it's not going to be recognized by others, but it also doesn't need to be. Like, that is not a necessary thing for you, right? You don't need it to be recognized for other people for it to matter or for it to count. What matters is how you feel about the change and the growth that you're going through, whether you've given it enough time to work and like really putting that patience in and evaluating how it's going and how you're feeling right now and how much more time needs to happen with it. And if, really deciding and reviewing whether what you're doing is actually propelling you forward. Because if it's not, then of course you need to make some changes. But if you're trying to jump the gun super early and you're like, oh, nothing's changing, and you've only given it a week, I'm like, oh, my friend, give it at least 3 to 7 more weeks. Okay? Like, really consider putting in the time and the effort. I know it seems like time is precious, which it can be. But if we don't put the time in to actually see if something will work, then we could miss out on like the benefits of going through with those changes and those shifts in our life. Yes, you might feel at the end, wow, that felt like a waste of like my 4 to 8 weeks of trying this new thing and it didn't work out. But at least it's something else that you can scratch off the list that didn't work out and move on from it. You don't ever have to have this regret or longing of like, wow, should I have done it longer? Do I think it would have worked? No, you put in the time and effort, and now you're moving forward. So just, can just realize that it doesn't need to be recognized by others. On the flip side of that, I do know it can be so annoying from my personal experience to have people in our lives point out the fact that it doesn't seem like we are changing, and if the work we are doing even matters. Like, I have gone through that experience multiple times where someone's like, well, you've been going to therapy for a long time and it doesn't seem like anything is changing. Like, is it even worth it? Should you even still be going? And it's like, okay, well, are you sitting in on those therapy sessions with me to actually see that I'm able to answer questions differently and share with my therapist how excited I am for the changes that I'm going through? And are you actually in my mind to see that I decided to make a decision to respond rather than to react in that emotional experience I'm going through? Like, it can be so annoying when people are like trying to call you out for not doing something when you're like, you don't understand all the work and time and the effort that I've actually put into this. You have no right to say that to me. But people will be people. People are wild these days. I think they have they think that they have the ability to just say whatever they want without any consequences. And they're like, oh, well, I'm allowed to say what I want. It's like, sure, but why would you do that? Why are you being a jerk on purpose? Like, literally my question for so many people is, why are you being a jerk on purpose? How is this serving you? And how high is your stack of insecurities that you really need to be doing this right now rather than working on yourself? Okay, that could turn into a tangent. We're not going to go there right now. But yeah, so it can be annoying when people are pointing out that they don't think that you actually are growing or changing in everything that you're doing. Sometimes I get so annoyed, like I said, by these comments, but really have to recognize that it's their ignorance in the situation that causes them to respond this way. And so we need to not care about those comments. I know that's easier said than done, but if we need to work on like telling ourselves it doesn't matter what they think, they don't actually know what's going on, they are just really all up in their feels and their ignorance of the situation and don't know what's going on. And they also are probably feeling really insecure of like whatever they are doing to change and grow in their lives. And maybe that's not working and they're projecting those feelings on to you. So just know it doesn't matter. They have no idea how much time and effort you are putting into yourself. And entertaining their opinions, really, to be honest with you, will only waste time and plant seeds of doubt in yourself. And we don't need that. We don't need to mess around with that. So we just need to focus on what we are doing. That's like the most important thing. We're so outwardly concerned about what other people are saying about us or thinking about us that we waste time in doing that when we really could be spending more time working on ourselves and feeling proud of ourselves and, increasing our confidence and worth and being like, oh my gosh, I don't even care if they like totally hate me because I love myself and I know that I'm doing what I need to be doing. Like, that is the mindset that I want to have. So, focus on what you're doing. That is what will continue to foster growth in your life. And if you struggle to know how to identify growth in yourself, then you're in luck because, well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I want to give you 7 ways for you to identify personal growth and emotional change in yourself. And just want to preface this whole thing before I get into the tips really quick to let you know that last year in October 2021, I did record a very, I would say, especially by the title, similar episode. And so I'm not here to like try to convince you that every piece of content that I create is like super brand new. Some of them are just like inspired from others. But when I was thinking about this topic today and how I want to talk about it, I always go and like triple check if I've already talked about that. Because I've had so many episodes that I don't want to like talk about the same thing unless it's like an improvement on that topic. And I also don't want to talk about it if I've recently talked about it because I feel like I'm just repeating things. And if you guys are avid listeners of the podcast, you're like, oh, why is she repeating herself? You might not need that, right? If you wanted me to repeat myself, you could just listen to the episode again. But anyway, there are times where the new episodes that I record will be much better than what was recorded maybe like 2 years ago when I first started because I've learned a lot and grown. Anyway, I just want you to know that I did go back to that episode and it actually is I wrote it down here on a Post-it. It's actually episode number 339 that was recorded back in October of 2021. And it's like titled something about like signs that you are healing as a person. And I was like, wow, this is kind of similar to what I really, really want to talk about today. So you're welcome to go back and listen to it. It's episode 339. However, I did review the notes in that show, and the tips that I'm going to give you right now are not the same as the ones that I gave in that show. In that show, I only gave 5. Today I'm giving 7, and there's only one that is like similar to that list in that episode. So anyway, this is me just being totally honest and transparent with you about what information I'm about to deliver to you. I'm going to give you more and not the same information that I already gave about 9 months ago. I'm just being honest with you. So if you would like to have like 2 episodes that talk about this topic in 2 different ways, hey, that's like a bonus, right? Okay. So anyway, there's only one tip in here that's similar than in the previous episodes list. And everything else is super brand new. So here we go. Let's just jump right into it. Again, 7 ways for you to identify personal growth and emotional change in yourself. So the first one is you respond more than react in heightened situations. So this is the one tip that is similar to the previous episode about, no signs that you are healing and growing. And I knew that I had to include this. I was trying to think about, should I cut this out because I've already talked about it recently? But I was like, no, I didn't cut it out because it's so integral. So integral for you to know that you are going through and have experienced personal growth and change because, it is always better, I talk about it often, to respond rather than react. A reaction is emotionally driven. You're letting your emotions drive the car and decide what's going to happen when you are in whatever experience, generally a heightened situation where you're feeling stress or anger or upset or whatever it is. And so an example of a reaction would be yelling and screaming at this person. And maybe it's profanities. Maybe you want to get up in their face and be really intimidating. A response is really taking a moment to think about, okay, how can I best respond to this situation that will actually serve me and, solve the problem that is happening here without any excessive force or need to display nastiness. I'm not saying you can't be angry, but you can go about it and say something that's more of oh my gosh, I don't understand why this happened. Can you help explain this to me? Or, hey, I'm feeling really angry and frustrated about this. I just need 5 minutes to calm down and then we can figure out what to do next. That would be more of a response rather than a reaction. And if you find yourself responding more than reacting, and you can maybe think back to 3 to 6 months and you're like, wow, I no longer just scream at someone, or I no longer want to run away, or I just want to break out in tears, or you whatever the reaction that you've had before in the past, you feel no, you're able to take a breath and really consider what would be the best use of your time and your emotions in this situation, then you are definitely growing and you're definitely experiencing that emotional change that is so important. So I want you to consider that. If you find that you have been responding more than reacting in heightened situations, you are definitely experiencing growth. Number 2, you've started speaking up for yourself and being assertive. Myself, I have noticed that I have been more assertive. The problem with with me being assertive is there are some people in my life that will see my assertiveness as being aggressive. And that's part of the reason why it took a long time for me to want to be assertive, because I also thought that me being assertive meant I was being aggressive. But I've actually been, that is not the case. I've been told that no, that what you're doing isn't being assertive. Isn't being aggressive, it's being assertive. But some people in my life take things a little dramatically and they're like, oh my gosh, you're being so aggressive. And I'm like, no, I think it's just you have your own insecurities and issues to deal with. And maybe you feel like you're being aggressive, but you're actually being assertive, and you just see it in a different way and have a different perspective on it. So anyway, I wanted to say that in case you were also dealing with wanting to be assertive, but people are calling you aggressive. They might also just be intimidated by you, just not because you're scary or anything, just other things. And so they want to make you feel like you're going about things the wrong way by calling you aggressive rather than actually realizing and calling you out for what you are, which is assertive. And that's a good thing. So if you find yourself speaking up for yourself, really advocating for yourself and being like, hey, I don't think this is appropriate, or I don't like this, or I do not want to be a part of this, and putting your foot down and being like, no, thank you, or I need this, or I am entitled to this thing that you've earned. If someone, let's say that you have a side job where you take photos or something like that, and they don't want to pay you, but you're like, hey, I provided the service, you need to pay me, as opposed to shrinking down and being like, okay, well, you didn't like it, so don't pay me. No, you deserve to get paid. So if you find that you are speaking up for yourself more, advocating for yourself, being assertive in what you want and what you need with others and protecting yourself and, enforcing your personal boundaries, then you're definitely experiencing growth and change emotionally. Number 3, you're able to ask for and accept help from others. I definitely want to make sure that I put both in there because it's one thing to ask for help and it's another thing to accept help from others. So I usually find that we're able to start accepting help from others and then ask for help because it's kind of a pride thing, right? Where we don't want to have to ask for help. We want to be able to say that we did everything on our own, that we are like super independent. We do everything ourselves when that's not really how the world is supposed to work. Like we're supposed to live in this community where everyone is really good at like certain things and we come together to experience other people's giftings and we give to them and they give to us and we're able to help each other and have lives that are based on like communities helping each other, not just everyone for themselves and everyone battling everyone to be the best person in the world or whatever it is. I think it's great for you to continue to progress and want to become the best at many things, but I also think it's important and helpful to have someone else help you that is better at things than you are, or just to have the assistance of someone else's perspective on how to do something. And so accepting help when people want to give it to you, you kind of are robbing them of the opportunity to use their giftings and talents if that's what they're coming to help you with. So you should like maybe think about that the next time someone's like, "Oh, can I help you?" And you're like, "No, I don't want help. I want to do it on my own." Maybe consider like, "Oh, will this be something that will help me and help them at the same time?" And then asking for help is an even bigger leap. I even struggle with that because I don't want to be a burden on other people, you know what I mean, when asking for help. And it's actually kind of a silly thought. We don't want to be a burden, but some people want us to ask for help because they want to help. They want to be a part of our lives and assist in any way they can. And so asking for help is this big hurdle that we can get over to realize that we don't have to do everything alone and we don't need to pretend like we know how to do everything ourselves because that's not going to serve us either. It's really going to cause us more pain and stress in the long run. Okay, so number 4, you're setting and enforcing personal boundaries. For a long time, I feel like for this whole year, this year, 2022 so far, and it's like June 13th when this comes out. And I know I've been promising that I will do a new revved up episode on personal boundaries, which I am going to. I want to do as much research as I can to really give you an updated list of tips and helpful information to best understand personal boundaries and set them and enforce them and know when they need to change or when people are trying to walk all over you despite enforcing boundaries. So anyway, that's coming. I just want to address that because I know I've been promising that and it's definitely going to get done this year. I just don't know when. So anyway, so to know that you are growing personally and having emotional change, you are definitely going to see, like, the proof of that is setting and enforcing personal boundaries. So if you're able to set boundaries in your life with anyone, like even if it's just your family, your spouse, your kids, at work, friends, whatever it is, even in a personal boundary that I have set in the last year or two is with volunteering at church. I love serving at church. It's great. My favorite way to serve at church is actually to be on the worship team. And it has nothing to do with being in front of people. That's a bonus. That's fun. Singing in front of people. It has everything to do with using a talent that I believe I have that is for the Lord. Singing and worshiping and being that role model and encouragement to other people that are in the sanctuary to put all their emotions and mind and their body into worshiping in that moment, to just let it all go. And that is part of the responsibility of being on the worship team, is because you are allowing yourself to freely worship, to encourage others to do the same, especially if they come into church and they have all these burdens that you don't even know about on them, right? But I used to serve a lot more in the church and it burnt me out really quick. I was just telling someone today on how I used to be the person that would do graphics and everything and follow the sermon through and be able to put words up on the screen and do that. And it sounds like a really menial job, but it's like more important than people would realize if you don't go to church and see how important it is to have notes. Anyway, regardless. But I burnt out of that. I think I did it for like a decade. And then I was like, I felt really bad and guilty in the moment, but I had to create a boundary of like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And then the next boundary that came was the fact that I would always be available to serve for anything. And I would try to go to every single event to help because I felt like I had to. And I realized it was making me not want to do anything else, not wanting to come to church anymore, not wanting to like get to know people for fear that they would ask me to volunteer for something, right? And so I set that boundary of being like, okay, I'm only going to serve on one team and I'm only going to serve this much because also I need to have time to fully enjoy church and like take in the word and also spend time with my family and friends. And so I set and enforced that boundary. And I realized when I did that a couple years ago, I had done so much personal and emotional growth because I no longer let this facade of guilt keep me from doing something that actually made me want to serve even more and pour more of my heart into the church. So I hope you understand it's like when you set and enforce boundaries with people and in whatever the situation is, I wanted to use that situation so it's not necessarily just something about relationships, which typically are spoken about in referencing personal boundaries, which can also be the truth as well when you're talking about having relationships and not discussing certain things with certain people and not allowing them to engage in certain activities or whatever it is. But if you are able to start setting and enforcing boundaries and telling people like, no, I'm sorry, you don't have to say sorry, it's a bad reflex for me. You have to be like, no, I do not want to do that, or no, that I don't have any desire to be a part of that, or I cannot do that. Just being able to tell people no, even if they try to push back on you, and really enforcing that boundary really demonstrates a lot of personal and emotional change and something that you should feel really super proud about. Okay, number 5. Remember, we only have 7. So number 5 is you allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself and others. So in regards to being vulnerable with yourself, you're able to tell yourself the honest truth about how you're feeling about certain things and how things make you feel, and really have an honest, open, emotional reflection on what's going on in your heart and your mind and how that relates to how you're living your life. Being vulnerable with yourself, I feel like, is the first step to being vulnerable in most things, because if you're able to be honest with yourself about how things trigger you and how you respond and react, and the thoughts and the mindsets that you're having and the things that you allow to sway you and shift you in the way that you act and live your life, is really important. It really helps you. It's really diving into self-awareness, to be honest with you, and knowing what you should engage in and what you shouldn't engage in. Now, taking the extra step to be vulnerable with other people and just totally share like what's going on in your life, being transparent and honest about what's going on. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do that with everyone, but I feel like being vulnerable is highly related to being honest. And so if someone is asking you how you are, I'm not saying you have to tell them that every terrible thing that's happened to you in the last 30 days, but just to be like, hey, I'm going through it, but things are looking up, or I'm feeling positive, or I am working on some problem solving and things are going to get better. So just being honest and open and not trying to pretend like everything is perfect, and not trying to leave this life that's a facade and make yourself look better than you are. Just being honest about where you are right now in life, because life is actually like peaks and valleys, like a roller coaster. So one day you're up and the next day you're down, and one year you're up and the next year you're kind of leveling out, and then you're moving back up, and then you might shoot down for a little bit and shoot back up. It's just, you never know. But being vulnerable and honest about where you are is such a good indication of growing emotionally and personally, because it means that you can just be honest with what's going on and you don't feel as much, sometimes you do, I do, shame with what you're going through and how you're dealing with it, and you're open to change, and you're open to trying different things and being on this journey as flexible as possible of becoming your best self. So allowing yourself to be vulnerable with others and yourself. Number six is mistakes and failures don't cause as much panic. I like this one because it definitely, like when I wrote it, I was like, yeah, this is definitely one that I have to include, because I was trying to think of a way to like integrate mistakes and failures into this list, because I knew that they were so important to personal change. We're going to inevitably go through mistakes and failures and things that just don't work out the way that we wanted to and anticipated happening. It's important to realize that we are going through a lot of growth when we realize that when those things happen and they go sideways, we're not going to panic as much. We're going to realize, okay, this kind of sucks. This really gets in the way of things happening on the schedule that I like, and maybe efficiency, and now I have to do more work and figure out change and maybe ask for help. But I don't need to panic, because I feel like personally for me in the past, I would definitely panic every time something didn't go right. I also dealt with a lot of like perfectionism. So if that's you, I understand. But it can be really difficult. We can freak out and think that the world is ending if we go through mistakes and failures, when really we need to accept them as a part of life, as something, and expect them to happen. Not to a point where you're like so fearful of doing anything because you're afraid they're going to happen, but more of like, okay, this might not work out, and that's okay, because we'll figure out what we need to do next. And that is kind of the flexible mindset that I live by right now. It's like, I used to live so high on anxiety, so high. And I was able to work through that, and it doesn't bother me as much. I will still have panic attacks sometimes, but anxiety about things has lessened. And it's interesting because even my husband will be like, well, what happens if this doesn't work out? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what would happen. Or sometimes I'll have a plan B or C, but then I'm like, okay, well, if those don't work, we'll figure it out. Like, we can't spend any more time worrying about it right now. How are we supposed to enjoy our life right now if we're just continually worrying about this? So if you find that mistakes and failures don't cause you as much panic as they used to, then you can definitely use that to identify personal growth and emotional change in your life. And then number 7, the last one that I want to share with you today, is shifting your mindset from negative to positive or neutral becomes easier. I wanted to make sure that when I talked about shifting your mindset and pulling yourself out of like the pit of despair, going from like a negative to a positive or to a neutral, I wanted to make sure that I highlighted neutral, because not every moment in our lives is going to be negative or positive. There's going to be times where things are in the middle. So things are okay. They're not bad, but they're not so good that you would consider it positive. They're good. Like, they're fine. Like, there's no issue, right? Because I don't want us to think that we have to live this life of constant positivity, because that would be toxic positivity, which I've talked about in the past, because we don't want to have to pretend like everything has to either be happy or sad. It can just be okay, and that's fine. That's reasonable. That is acceptable. There's nothing to be shameful about that. There's a lot of times where I feel like I'm just in this neutral mode, and it's okay. It honestly gives me a break from being like disappointed or so overly excited that I can just breathe. And I'm just like, okay, I am in neutral right now. And it's just so good. It feels so good. So I want you to know that you don't always have to be either positive or negative. You can be neutral, and that's good, and it's acceptable, and it's you can still engage in like gratitude and thankfulness in there. You can still like be working on becoming your best self in there, and it's a great place to be. So anyway, but you're able to identify personal growth and emotional change in yourself when you find it a lot easier to shift your mindset away from negativity and into positivity or feeling neutral. When you don't feel like it has such a tight, choking grasp on you anymore, and you find that it's easier for you to be like, wait, no, I need to stop and reconsider how I'm thinking. How is this serving me? Is it going to help me solve any problems? No? Okay, let's just consider that we need to slip into a neutral or positive mindset to get through this, and then figure out how we can problem solve this, how we can ask for help, how we can figure out how we can get to the next step. So if you find it easier, even just a little bit, like, you can take this as steps, because you can find it a tiny bit easier now, and then maybe in a couple weeks you're like, it's even easier. And then in a couple months you're like, wow, I was able to stop myself and not let myself go down a rabbit hole of thinking of every freaking negative thing that could possibly happen in this situation. So that is definitely a really big indication of personal growth and emotional change. And with that, that is all 7 of the ways for you to identify personal growth and emotional change in yourself. I hope this has helped you, but I want you to know that this is not a conclusive list. Again, you can go back to the previous episode, which is like 339, and hear like 4 other suggestions that I have for you. You can go online if you feel like this advice did not help you that much. That's totally fine. I am not saying that I'm an expert necessarily in knowing every single way to identify personal growth. Plus, like, you can have a heyday on Google and just look at all the possibilities if you feel like none of these hit home. Totally fine. But thank you so much for listening to the Real Positive Girl podcast, again with me, Sabrina. Thank you for downloading, sharing, listening to the show. You guys are the thing that keeps me like so excited and happy, and I appreciate it. I'm just so stoked anyone listens to the show, to be honest, and I'm glad to hear that it has been helpful. Again, check the show notes below for how to get to me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. You can sign up for the newsletter that comes out every week. You can join the Facebook community. There's lots of things. Just go check it out. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head anything else. But until next time, have a good one, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.